Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 13 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. One of the coolest parts of buying a new car is that new car smell. But in today's show, we are going to reveal why that new car smell might actually stink. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's show. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. And we would love to connect with you. So, guys, we got a really exciting topic we're talking about here today. We're talking all about new cars, and that's a really hot topic for a lot of people.
I mean, this is a touchy subject for people. This is probably the one subject for me that I've gotten the most heated debates about because, and it just mostly, and I bought a couple new cars in my life, and I was there. I remember having all the same reasons why I bought it, having all the same emotional attachment to this vehicle that I had, and I think a lot of people, a car is an expression of somebody. You know, typically you buy it, it represents you, who you are. And when you start kind of poking holes in the reasons that you shouldn't buy that, it just tends to bring up a lot of emotion in people.
Amber, what are you thinking? You got a guest. Why don't you introduce your guest that you're bringing on here today to talk to us?
I do. We have Paul. He is my husband, and he's here to talk about new cars because he works at a dealership and deals with this a lot.
Paul, welcome, man. How you doing?
I'm great, Brad. Yourself?
Awesome. Glad to have you on, and you can offer some insight because you kind of get a, maybe a different viewpoint than probably all of us and what most people do as to what happens with new cars. So it's great to have you on. And also, as kind of a little sneak peek, we're also going to be doing a whole episode on buying used cars, and Paul's going to be joining us for that to kind of talk about some tips and tricks on buying your next used car. And hopefully helping some insight just from the mechanical standpoint, what things to look for. So we're super excited to have Paul on. So check this out. So as we've kind of talked about, this is a hot debate, and I've been a part of many personal finance Facebook groups, and when the new car topic kind of comes up, it's like being at the dinner table with family that you don't like. You know, there's a lot of rude comments, there's yelling, there's Facebook fights, and it gets pretty heated. And the new car topic is important because as a financial coach, I see firsthand how these car payments are playing a role in people's finances. And in most cases, it isn't pretty. So today's show isn't about talking necessarily about how stupid it is to buy a new car or picking on people who do. That's not what this is about. It's really meant to educate and hopefully challenge you if you've always been dead set on a new car. We want to show you the costs. We want to give you some great information to help you make a better decision. And if at the end of this show, hey, you still want to go out and buy a new car? Hey, so be it. That's your life. You can go ahead and do that. But what we want to do is we want you to see what role that new car is playing in your success or lack of success in your financial life. So guys, as we kick the show off tonight, let's first talk about, because we've all driven new cars for the most part, right? Why do we love new cars? Like, why is this such a thing for so many people, do you think?
Am I just the rare one who's never owned a brand new car?
I can't believe that. I did not know that about you, that you've never driven a brand new car. That's pretty remarkable.
Never.
I like that.
I mean, it was my last car was pretty new. I bought it off of my aunt who, I mean, it had only 30,000 kilometers. I don't know what that translates to miles, but so it was pretty new, but it wasn't brand new. And I've never really had a huge desire to get a new car.
New cars just haven't been your thing.
No, I guess not.
Well, they were certainly my thing for many years. I've driven so many new cars. I almost could lose count of how many cars I've had. And a big part of it is I think it's all about the celebration. It's fun. I think a lot of the times we associate new cars, especially maybe the brand or the make and model, to success. I know, Ryan, in a podcast before, you mentioned that you bought a Kia because it looked like a Mercedes, right?
Heck yeah, man. That thing was awesome. Yeah, that's why I bought it. It was, I mean, I couldn't, at the time we couldn't afford that. I mean, I couldn't afford the Kia I bought at the time, but it was what we could get a payment on. And it did have that look at first glance when you looked at it. If you didn't know anything about cars, now trust me, if you know something about cars, you knew it was a Kia. But I didn't think it looked, and so that was the reason I bought it. And again, it was because I think I was buying a car really for other people. I wasn't buying it for me. I mean, I didn't even really love that brand or that. It was just, I liked the look of it and what it portrayed to other people who may see it.
Like we talked about, like Brian said, is to impress other people. I think a lot of people, especially nowadays with the onset of social media, I think a lot of people live for that social media post. Like you could post that you got yourself a brand new car, and we seek those likes and that approval of making that decision, right? It makes you feel better when you're able to post some of those things on Facebook. Some other reasons why people buy brand new cars is they're safe, right? We buy into this idea that new cars are just, they're the state of the art. They've passed the most recent safety standards. It's the best of the best. And if you've got a family, we use every excuse that we can, and we might be using the excuse to buy a brand new car that I bought it because of safety. We also buy it because of reliability. You don't want to be stuck on the side of the road with a used car and smoke coming out of the engine and you're stranded, right? I mean, that wouldn't be fun. But check this out. According to thezebra.com, 76% of Americans actually favor the appearance over the actual reliability of the new car, which again kind of goes back to, Ryan, what you were kind of talking about. It's almost something that like that car is just something you identify. It helps. It's almost like it brands you, and you have that connection with that car.
Yeah, even when we've bought, even to this day, I think even when we've bought even some used cars, but definitely new cars I'm part of this statistic, because if I get in a car that's like, best reliability, but I get in it and I don't like where the cup holder is, or I don't like certain things about it, how it looks, I'll make that, I'll definitely pass on reliability to have something that I'm comfortable in and that is more of my identity rather than something that is, safe and reliable and going to last me a lot longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think when I was buying brand new cars, I don't think I ever considered reliable. I don't think that was really on my list of things. I think I just wanted a new car just because it was cool. It smelled good, looked good. I was a big fan of always Jeep Wranglers. I had a brand new Jeep Wrangler. That was always fun. Last but not least, we get into the warranty, right? I mean, how many people say I buy a brand new car because it's got that warranty? It's hassle-free. If anything goes wrong with it, I don't have to worry about making those repairs for the first few years that I own it, or however certain many miles that you go in that vehicle. It's all going to be covered by the warranty. So those are kind of some of the common, reasons why people buy new cars, and those aren't necessarily bad reasons. Where it gets kind of difficult with new cars is what we're going to talk about next, and we start talking about the scary side of new cars, and we're going to be covering some of those tips here coming up after the commercial break. Hey, if you love planners, this is for you. Do you know why planners frustrate me, though? Because they only get it half right. Now, sure, they're really fancy at helping you manage your time, which is really important, obviously, but where they get it wrong is money. Now, I believe that there are two important resources that you need to have control of in your life to have success. One is time, and the other one is your money. And most planners don't include any financial planning, and that's frustrating. Things like keeping track of paydays and when bills are due, spending habits, yearly expenses, budgets, cash flow planning, debt elimination plans, goal planning. These things are a real pain in the butt because then you have to create your own. And who has time for all that? So instead, what happens for most of us? Nothing. We tend to ignore our finances even more, and things only get worse. Well, that can all end today. I am so excited to announce the release of my brand new, totally awesome Debt Freedom Planner here this year. Now, before you say, Brad, I already have a planner. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is not an ordinary day planner. This Debt Freedom Planner is a companion tool that works with your day planner to help you save more money, pay off debt, and melt away financial stress. This is the tool that we've all been waiting for. Also, if you're not a paper person, maybe you love spreadsheets or electronic versions, we've got a digital version available to you as well. So head on over to the realdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu at the top of the page, get all those details, and order your very own Debt Freedom Planner today. Hey guys, welcome back to today's show. Today we are talking about why that new car smell might stink. And, you know, when we were talking about some of the benefits of buying a new car, why people buy a new car, you also got to keep in mind when you're buying that new car, for most people outside of a home and, well, not when you look at student loans and education, but outside of those few things, like this is a pretty big investment. Like for most people, this is outside of their home is probably going to be the second biggest expense that they have when it comes to their personal finances. And that's why new cars or cars in general are going to, you know, either play a role in your success or a role in that you're not really successful with your finances. So now that we kind of talked about maybe the common reasons why people buy those new cars, let's talk a little bit about the scary side of new cars. And for me, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about interest. We're going to talk about the monthly payment today. We're going to talk about some of those things. But for me, the biggest scary part about buying a new car is the depreciation. Because check this out, a new car can depreciate as much as 30% in the first year that you own that vehicle, all right? And up to 60% or more after the first 5 years, depending on the make and model of that vehicle. So let's just look at some math. Right now, the average new car price, as the time when we're recording this podcast, according to Edmunds.com, is $36,718, which is mind-blowing, by the way. $36,718 is the average new car price. So in the first year, the lost depreciation or the lost value on that vehicle, based on statistics, is anywhere between $9,000 upwards of $11,000 in lost value just in the first year that you own it. And if you look at 5 years, you're looking at losing up to $22,000 or more in value on that car.
Well, as I said, I see it all the time, and I've got sales guys at work that are like, the guy is nuts to buy that car because how much they're losing out on. Like you're talking the average cars, but when you're looking at some of the trucks that up in Canada are $80,000-$90,000, and as soon as the person puts their name on that dotted line for the contract, all of a sudden the truck goes from being worth 80 to 90 to being worth 60 to 65. That's
unbelievable.
Instant. I think one of the big things people say is, well, I don't care about the depreciation because I'm going to keep this car. I'm going to drive this car until it doesn't drive anymore. But I think statistics show that a vast majority of people don't keep their cars 5 years. And so if you're losing that much value and you're not paying the loan off when you go to buy another car, which a lot of people are doing now, you're rolling all that negative equity because you don't have that equity in this car into the next car. And that's how it all really starts to cascade and fall. It's what happened to us. I loved our cars at first, and then slowly after, 3-4 years, it's not new anymore. It's not fun. So then you're wanting to trade that in. So I know in my mind, I was like, I'm driving this into the dirt. I don't care about depreciation. But then there I was a few years later trading it in and just rolling more negative equity into the next car.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, you'll do anything. You'll sell yourself on anything to get yourself into that new car and to make yourself feel better. That's buyer's remorse, right? We want to make that buyer's remorse feel better by coming up with every excuse possible to get that vehicle. Yeah, vehicles are trending upwards in the sense that people are keeping their vehicles a little bit longer. But even with that said, though, like Paul just said, as soon as you sign your name, the depreciation it's immediate. So if you think about it, and we're going to be talking about used cars in the next episode, but what if you bought a car that was just a year old? You think about just the thousands of dollars you'll save just in that first year. So yeah, it's not a brand spanking new car, but it's pretty darn close, and you're saving yourself thousands and thousands of dollars. That's why when people come in or talk to me, and again, we're not talking about money or personal finance, but they'll just talk about a new car they purchased, and they'll say, I got a great deal on a new car. And I always think that that's kind of funny, and I keep it to myself because, we know it could get into a pretty heated debate, but it's like, I don't ever think anyone gets a great deal on a new car just because of this whole depreciation side of things. It's crazy. So you've got the depreciation side. That's one of the scary sides. Another scary side is just the overall payment itself. Right now, the average car payment in the United States, according to USA Today, is $550. So think about this. You're sending $550 a month on average to an investment that over the next 5 years is going to lose 60% of its value. And for most people living paycheck to paycheck, that's too much of your income going to an investment that is dropping like a rock in value, especially if you combine this with a bunch of other wasteful spending habits. Like, for instance, there's other things that you purchase that go down in value, like your phone, computers, clothes. And if most of your discretionary spending is going to expenses that continuously just go down in value, it is really, really hard to win in that situation. So you got to keep in mind that your income is the best tool to help you reach financial freedom. But when it's always wrapped up in a bunch of payments, especially high car payments, it's really hard to start turning your financial life around because all of your money, all of your payments are just bleeding your paycheck dry. I know for me, I never got up to the 550 mark, but I did have a $500 car payment one time. And that was the last car that I had. This was like late 2000s. And it was a $500 car payment. And for me, getting rid of that car payment was one of the best things that I ever did to turn around my finances. Ryan, what kind of, like, did you guys ever get up that high about $550 car payments or anything like that?
No, we never. I mean, but I think, so no, we never had 550. I think ours was, the one I had was 450, but we had another car that was also 400. So I think when you look at this, you say the average car payment's 550, but if you're in a family and you've got two people, you potentially have two cars that, you could have one for 550, but you could also have another one for 350 or 400 right behind it. And you add insurance and all those things on top of it. And suddenly you've got, $1,000, $1,200, $1,300 a month wrapped up in just vehicles.
Easily. Yep. And I see that all the time when we've got, especially when you got a family. And you're right. There's not always like one, it's not straight. Each car payment's $550. You're right. One's usually higher than the other, but the total combined, it's not uncommon for me to see well over $1,000 a month going to just car payments. And like we said, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's a big reason why. If you're wondering why you're have a lot of financial stress or you can't save for retirement, it could be parked out in your garage or in your driveway, and that's one of the reasons why those things are happening. Let's also talk about, it's not just the payments, but it's also the fact that vehicle prices are always going up. They're just ridiculous. We just talked about the average new car right now is over $36,000. Like, buying $40,000 cars nowadays is just not uncommon. And vehicle prices are only going to increase. Therefore, what happens for these dealerships is they have to extend out the terms of the loans to keep the payments more affordable. We talk about this, at least here in the United States, all the time. There's always this talk of slow wage growth. My wages aren't growing like the cost of living is growing, and cars are one of those things. And check this out. These statistics are very alarming. 38% of new car buyers, this was in the first quarter of 2019, 38% of new car buyers in the first quarter took out loans for 61 to 72 months. And 32% of car shoppers signed for loans between 73 and 84 months. So if you think about those numbers, that means 70%, 7 out of 10 people who purchased a new car have loan terms higher than what used to be the standard 48 to 60-month terms. And kind of like what we talked about, like Ryan was talking about earlier, is that the longer the term, the higher the interest rates that you're going to pay. And it also sets you up for always getting into this negative equity, where when you're getting ready to sell and get rid of a car, you're going to roll that negative equity that you're upside down in into the next car, meaning that your car payments on your next car are only going to be that much higher. And this is a vicious cycle that a lot of people are in.
Yeah, I see that kind of thing all the time at work, Brad. It's people. In fact, I had a recent one where it was a Ford that I had to do a mechanical fitness on. And the reason I was doing the fitness on it was because we were looking at trading it in, or the customer was looking at trading it in. They bought it in September of 2019, and they were trading it in because they did not like the truck. So if you think how much they just lost on that, it's insane. Getting into the negative equity, as you keep talking about, the next vehicle that they were buying was another $70,000 truck. So you tack on how much they lost on the first one because they've only made 4 payments on it.
And we see that a lot. I mean, I dealt with that a lot in my 20s when I was buying new cars all the time, and I just didn't know any better. I would just roll it in thinking that, oh, this is just normal, but it's not. And this is why my car payment back in the late 2000s got upwards of $500 a month. It wasn't necessarily because of the cost of the vehicle. It was because of the cost of that vehicle plus the depreciation of all of the other vehicles that I had bought over the previous years that had finally just rolled into this final loan. So this is where these new cars can get a little tricky. Like Ryan said, if you may have the best of intentions of saying that you're going to drive this car until its wheels fall off. And if that's your end goal and you really do that, then by all means, I mean, that's great. But let's be real, most people aren't keeping their cars and letting the wheels fall off. They're trading them in for another new car. So let's talk a little bit about interest rates. You know, you'll see these advertisements on television or on the radio for, low rates, right? Either low rates on financing, 0% financing. They'll advertise low payments. And then you'll always kind of hear for well-qualified buyers. And, again, I think one of the reasons why the dealerships run these ads is to get people to come to the dealership and take a look at a car, right? I mean, you see those low rates, you see those low payments. It's like, hey, I can afford that kind of stuff. I can do that. But then what ends up happening is that, again, it's only for well-qualified buyers. So when you kind of actually sit down at the finance table, they run your credit, they start, figuring out what you can do, and you find out that you're not considered one of these well-qualified buyers. But now you've already given that car a test drive. You've already kind of fallen in love with that car. You already can't picture your life without that car. And if you add on some really good sales magic and some savvy salespeople, it's really hard to get up and walk out of that dealership without that car. And this is how people get roped into higher interest rates, longer terms, and getting themselves into a car that they necessarily can't really afford because they went into that dealership off of those ads that they're running out there.
Yeah, I think buying a car is a very huge emotional, for a lot of people, it's a very emotional transaction. There's a lot of emotion in what you're buying and what you picked out. I mean, I know people in the industry and they're presenting financing in the 20 to 25% range in some case for a car because their credit is so bad, and they're saying yes to it. And it's just mind blowing that people are doing that to themselves, but it's because they're emotionally wrapped up in their purchase. They don't think through it. They come in thinking they're going to have a decent car payment. And when the car payment's $200-$300 more a month than what they thought, they're still going through with it because they're emotionally wrapped up in that purchase. And that it's just scary. It's very scary to me that and the same thing with the loan terms. And I think this is important for people to realize too, is you might have a $550 a month car payment and you're thinking, well, yeah, I took out a 6 or 7 year loan, but I'm paying $550 a month. I'm going to build equity in it. The very first 2-3 years of your loan, it's all front ended and most of the interest. And that's where you're paying most of your interest on that car is the first 2 or 3 years you're going to pay. And you don't really start attacking the main balance of that car till the final few years of your loan. So you could be paying 2 years on a $50,000 car and go to trade it in and realize that you have barely touched the actual balance of the car. And right. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yep. Yeah, very good point. And again, this all kind of goes back to what we talked about, when it comes to debt and marketing, this plays a big role, this whole marketing side of things, and the emotion. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me how many people will purchase a car almost like they just, they purchase paper towel, I mean, like it's that, like that kind of a decision for some people. And it's not like, this is a big decision. Like you're going to have this car for years and years and years and this payment for years and years. You really need to consider how this is going to play a role in your financial life, because again, this is the second to third most expensive payment that you're going to have with your personal finances.
As far as the interest rates and stuff like that, and the advertising for car sales, one of the things that a lot of people, they go in looking because it's only $300 and some a payment, but they're overlooking the fact that they've changed it from being monthly to being bi-weekly or weekly. So all of a sudden, what seems like a really good deal, like say $500 or $250, people are thinking it's in a month, and it's actually $500 a month adding up. So they're overlooking that a lot of the time.
Interesting. So I didn't know. So that's how they advertise some of the payments.
Yeah, most of them now. Very seldom do you ever see car payments, at least here, monthly. It's almost always biweekly, because for us, it's not uncommon to see, like for a truck, for a 7-year payment, it's not uncommon to see $900 a payment. So
Wow.
what they'll do is say, oh, well, for $450 a payment, you can get this truck, and it's fully loaded and it has everything. But that's every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So that's literally working to people's paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. That
Keep
is
in mind, that's Canadian dollars.
That's
though.
Canadian
yeah,
dollars.
correct.
So
Yeah.
take off 30%. All right. But
Right. Right.
it's still putting it right in that $500, $550 monthly
Yeah.
payments.
Right. But that's interesting. I don't know if the states, I don't know if they do that down. I don't believe they do. I don't think I've seen that, and legally I don't know if they're allowed to do that down here. That just might be a difference between Canada and the US.
Could be.
But that is interesting. But then again, that's just another example of them just spinning it a little bit more to make it look more appealing. But at the end of the day, it's still not so good.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one of the ways of telling if a person is planning on keeping a vehicle for a while is getting the manufacturer's extended warranty, which that's one thing that hasn't been discussed, is the overall cost of maintaining the car over even over the 3 years, which is the general warranty on most vehicles. There's still additional costs that are involved in that, like your maintenance and stuff like that, and stuff that just doesn't get covered under warranties. But people that are planning on keeping their vehicles longer also generally go with like the manufacturer's extended warranty. So they're paying extra, and hopefully, basically it's an insurance policy more than anything, because if nothing goes wrong, they're paying that extra money for no reason. If stuff does go wrong, then yeah, they're covered.
Yeah. Yeah. And how are those extended warranties? Are they a good deal?
They can be. One of the ones that I've seen quite often is basically a maintenance package added on to the extended warranty. So there's a lot of things that aren't covered under your regular warranties or your regular extended warranties. The maintenance packages, for the amount that they charge versus what they actually cover, we did the math one time for all the parts that would be included and everything, and it worked out where you were basically paying an extra $600 over and above anything you could possibly get in the maintenance package.
Interesting.
So,
okay. Huh. That's some good insight. Thanks for that. So like Paul was saying, though, that there are some secondary costs that kind of, leads us into the next topic that we're going to talk about. But it's not just the monthly payment that you got to be worried about. It's the secondary costs of owning that vehicle as well. And according to USA Today, and this kind of blew me away, guys, check this out. According to USA Today, altogether, it costs the average American about $9,282 per year to maintain that brand new car. That's $773.50 per month to own a new vehicle. And this is factoring in fuel, maintenance, depreciation, insurance, borrowing costs, and this is all according to AAA. So again, these are all just some of the figures that they add into owning that car. That's an incredible amount of money, and especially if you think about it from a family standpoint, if you've got 2 of those cars, I mean, that is a tremendous amount of money every year going to those vehicles.
Yeah, I think you look at that, you say $550 a month for the payment, and you've got another 100, $200 and almost $25 a month going towards, everything else to maintain that vehicle that you're not necessarily planning for. So, and again, some people buy these big trucks, these big vehicles. You might move up from a smaller compact car, and you might go buy that big truck, and then the first time you take it to get an oil change, you're like, what? How much is it? Because you just weren't prepared, because you got to factor in, like, what are you buying? What is it going to cost to maintain? A lot of people might go buy a BMW and then realize, oh, I didn't realize an oil change was this much more than an average oil change. So you really need to factor in, like, what are those ongoing maintenance costs that are going to be included?
Yeah, absolutely. So then the next question is, and if you guys, if buying a new car is a little scary or a little expensive because of the depreciation, the interest, and all the stuff that we're talking about, what about a lease? Should I maybe consider leasing a vehicle? And some of the benefits of leasing a vehicle are typically going to be your lower payments. You still get a warranty. So again, there's little to no major maintenance involved as far as, having to make major repairs. And the beautiful thing is you get a new car every 2 to 3 years. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. And you might be thinking, looking at a lease, how is that a bad plan if you always want to have, again, that kind of nice, newer, reliable, safe vehicle? So, but there are some cons to leasing, and I kind of look at it as the wolf dressed in sheep's clothing in a lot of cases. And I talk to more people that get themselves into some tight spots when it comes to leasing, more so than you might think. And some of the downsides to obviously leasing is that you don't own the car. So when the lease is over, you get nothing back, like nothing. So the down payment that you put down, all of those payments that you put into that vehicle, all the maintenance that you did keeping that vehicle up and running, oil changes, car washes, everything, all of that stuff that you put into it, you get nothing. You get no money after passing go. And that's one of the downsides. You're also, when you're leasing, and this is, I think, the biggest area where most people get themselves into trouble. When you lease a car, typical leases, again, there's leases all over the place, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. But when you lease a car, you are making a bet with yourself that your life is not going to change, because they put limitations on those leases. For instance, how many miles you can go, and obviously it's very costly to terminate the lease early. So, for instance, let's say you lease a car today, and right now your commute to work is only, say, 5 to 10 miles a day. But then all of a sudden you lose your job, and now you got to go on a job search, and now your next job you find 40, 50 miles away. That is going to change a lot what's going on with that vehicle. And this is where I see some people getting themselves into trouble with leases. Some people don't even drive their cars anymore, and they're sitting here making monthly payments on their lease, and the car just sits on the side of the street because they can't drive it anymore. The fees for the extra miles are just way too expensive, and so the car's just got to sit. So these are the things that you really need to consider when leasing. This is when it can, it's almost like a gamble. Are things going to stay the same for the term of that lease? Because if they don't, it could cost you a lot of money in extra mile fees or wear and tear fees and things that you're going to be having on that vehicle because of the extra miles and things that you're putting on it. All right. It's also been proven long-term that leasing is actually more expensive than purchasing a vehicle long-term. So if you are in this regular cycle of leasing cars over and over again, you are actually going to spend more money long-term than, say, someone who's going to purchase a new car. And there's been several publications out there that have proven this just by looking at the numbers and the math. All right. Also, one of the downsides for me when it comes to leasing is that you're essentially looking at a life of never-ending payments. And that's obviously not the goal of what we're trying to do in this show. Is we're trying to help you get to the point where you have no payments.
I know up here, when it comes to leasing a vehicle, like you're talking about the overages and so on, myself and one of the sales guys actually did the math, and you can do it one of two ways. Either you can prepay for additional mileage. So if a lease normally includes 20,000 miles, you can add on to that for an additional fee. When we did the math, it actually worked out to be cheaper to pay for it at the end. But then it becomes a lump sum that you have to pay, as opposed to spreading it out over the terms of your lease. Is it a good way of doing it? Depends on the mileage that you're planning on driving, but it definitely worked out to be cheaper to pay it as a lump at the end.
And as a car dealership, hey man, you got $3,000 you owe us. We'll just roll that into the next lease for you. Don't worry about it.
Yep. That's how they do it. Yeah, exactly. Right. For some people who are out there who might be dead set on those new cars, this show may have agitated you a little bit. There's no question about it. So here's the thing. If the math doesn't bother you, then keep buying a new car. But you also got to keep in mind, it's not just the car. Like we talked about, the average income, it can't bear the weight of high car payments, credit cards, student loans, wasteful spending habits. The average income, we just don't have an income where we can have it all. So if a new car is just super important to you, like you have just got to have it, then I would recommend that you also need to consider what are you going to cut out of other areas of your life so you can afford to have that car. Like you've got to look at what can I mercilessly cut out of my personal finances in order to be able to afford having this brand new car every single month. The other option is you can look at ways to increase your income. And, you know, are there things that you can do to increase the amount of money that you've got coming in to offset the fact that you want to have this brand new car? Because, again, our goal of this show is to help you get to the point where you can reach financial freedom. And I personally believe, you know, Amber and Ryan and Paul, you guys could share your opinions on this, but I personally believe that for most people, it's going to be really, really hard to reach financial freedom and reach debt freedom and doing that with a brand new car just because of how expensive that they are. So if you're not willing to sacrifice that area of your life and you're going to have those higher car payments, then you've got to look at other areas. Where can you sacrifice? You're either going to sacrifice other items in your personal finances or you're going to sacrifice your time. And for me, the real major problem I have with any of this is that then this comes down to trading your time for stuff. And that's not the direction we want to go. We're looking at happier, stress-free living. And when you're trading time for stuff, this is stress. This is working at jobs that we don't like to pay for a lot of stuff that we can't afford type living. We want to kind of get out of that mentality. So again, if you've got to have that new car, totally fine. But look for other areas that you can really, really cut. You've got to really cut it because you've got to make that difference. You've got to be able to take that extra money and pay down your other debts, your credit cards, your student loans, the other stuff that you're dealing with.
Yeah, and to me, a big thing is if you're struggling every month to pay your bills, your paycheck to paycheck. I was there, freeing up $450 a month out of our budget when we got rid of our car and just bought a $3,000 used car. That made a huge difference in how much debt we were able to attack, what we were able to do. So if you want that $550 a month car payment and you're struggling paycheck to paycheck, just know that you're choosing that. You're choosing to that car. You know, you can step down. It takes some creativity. It took some creativity for us, but don't look at it as, you know, a lot of people get upside down in a car and they just feel there's no way out. We were the same. There are creative ways to get out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to kind of lead us into, there is a better plan. There are some better ways to do this car stuff. And you can still have some really great, fantastic cars. There's no question about it. And that's what we're going to be talking about upcoming on our next podcast. We're going to be talking about how you can buy great, used, reliable, safe, used cars. And we're also going to be talking about, like Ryan said, tips and tricks on ways that you can get out of a car that you're upside down on so you can start moving in the direction of reducing that payment, reducing your overall debt.
Hey, what's this I see? I thought this was a party! Let's
Hey guys, you know that sound means? Sound. You know that sound means it's time to do some celebrations of the show. And the first celebration we have up today is Lindsay Bolus. She says, I made it through the week. My direct report put in her 2-week notice. And I'd have loved to gone on retail therapy rampage, but I didn't. I opted to not eat lunch today as I forgot my packed lunch in the fridge, so I'll eat right away when I get home. So again, big part of that behavior, big part of those financial habits, areas of your life are going to cause you to spend money, and Lindsay recognizes that, and she stopped. So that's good. Good for her.
Amber Elizabeth Langdon paid off counseling and paid $300 towards a credit card. She says, I used my savings to pay for a certification application to get a better paying job. So hopefully I hear good news in the next 2 weeks.
Awesome. Good for Amber. Congratulations.
Jeannie Bodner, this week I paid off $4,000 in bills, and I'm about to go deposit $1,500 into the bank that will go into various sinking funds.
Heck yeah, way to go. That is awesome. That's a great week. Gretchen Magura, I am celebrating the fact that I am at a point in my life that when something happens, like someone forgot to submit payroll on time, and I don't have to worry about overdrafts occurring in my checking account. That is huge. That right there is stress-free living. That's what we're trying to get you to. That's awesome. Good for you, Gretchen.
Cassandra Stoller she says she has not used a credit card in 6 weeks.
Heck yeah. Break it up with dad. I love that, Cassandra. Way to go. Way to give that absolute chance. Good for you. Hey guys, do you have a question about your finances? If so, send us an email at brad@therealdebtfreedad.com and we will do our best to get your question on an upcoming episode of the podcast. So today's question, guys, is I have a dilemma. I am working my way out of debt and having some great success, but I have a family member who isn't doing so well with money, and recently they've asked me to lend them some money. This isn't the first time. I've done it in the past, but I want to work on my own goals, and if I lend them money, it's going to take me longer to get out of debt. What would you guys do? And as kind of like a little bit of a backstory to this, this isn't the only person that I get this question from. Believe it or not, family and friends and money it plays a big part in a lot of people's finances and stress. So I know that this question isn't only going to help this person. I believe it's going to help a lot of people out there because I think this is a bigger problem than most people let on.
This is a tough one. Gosh, because we've been in the situation where we've lent the money, and we've also been in the situation where we've had to say no. And I think it's going to come down to having a tough conversation, and maybe introducing what you're trying to do with your finances could potentially help guide this person who's asking you to borrow money to be more financially free on their own. But again, I don't know. This is a tough question, Brad.
I would not say no, and leave it at that. I 100% agree that I think you have to, come alongside them and explain what it is you're doing, what you're going through, how maybe can you show them what you've done, what you're trying to do. Maybe that maybe you can model that for them. Maybe that can help them, see a different road and help them do that. The answer to me would be no, but it would be a heartfelt no. It wouldn't just be a no way, get lost kind of no. It would be more of a no, but here's why, and show them what you're doing, the reasons why that you can't do it. But I say that, but then I also don't know the situation. So, Brad, you're my brother. If you came to me in a need of something that I can't say, I'd say no matter what the need was, because I don't know. There are maybe some extenuating circumstances that would maybe go outside of that. If you said, hey, I want to borrow some money to buy a car, I'd say no. But it just depends. But overall, my gut feel is similar to Amber. I would, heartfelt come alongside them, explain why I'm saying no to them.
Yeah. Well, I think being that this isn't the first time, it seems to be a reoccurring, thing in the question here. It says this isn't the first time I've done it in the past or borrowed this person money in the past. So I'm kind of a similar of approach. At first, I think I would take, the softer side and I would agree. I think I always look at it as if I'm going to help someone, I'm going to give it to them with the thinking behind that I'm never going to see that money again. And as someone who's lending money to somebody else, especially if it's a family member or a friend, you have to do that for the relationship, and that responsibility lies on your shoulders, unfortunately. Because if you go into it expecting to get that money back and the money doesn't get returned, the relationship is gonna suffer big time. So I always kind of look at it as if we're in a position where someone comes and asks us for money, I would rather just give it to them rather than lend it to them. So that's the way I'm going to kind of look at it, is that if I can give it to them, and if one day they ever pay it back, great, but I never expected to see that money ever again, and we just kind of did it as, hey, we wanted to help you out. But I would never get in the habit of lending anybody, at least friends and family, any money. I would be more in the position of just giving it to them. The other thing, guys, with this is that I find all too often, and maybe you guys have some feedback on this too, but this changes a little bit, because what I find is that people who are going through this type of a situation, it's usually asked with a lot of guilt and pressure. They'll put the guilt trip on them, or like, for instance, like this person's doing really well. And if they turned around and said, hey, I'm doing really well because I'm working on some of this stuff and this is how I'm doing it. And they start showing some of this stuff. I find that some people, some family and friends, they don't have those boundaries. They'll like lay on the guilt even more. Well, if you're doing so well, you should help me out. Like that's why you're doing it, right? To help me out. Like there are people who really pull all those emotional strings. I hear it all the time from our members. And that's where those real solid boundaries have got to come into play. And it's like, that's where for me, it kind of turns from, okay, I tried the softer approach. Now it's just no. Right? Now it's just
I've had
no.
to be that person, Brad. I have somebody in my life like that, and I've had to finally just say no, and they stopped coming around and asking me for money. So,
Yep.
But it just had to happen. And you're right. They will play on those emotions.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our podcast. Now, we talked all about new cars today, so don't be going hating on us today, all right? But please leave us an honest review on Apple Podcasts. We read every single one of those. And as you know, the Debt Free Dad podcast is here to help you live a happier and stress-free financial life. If you know someone who could benefit from our show, please give us a share. We appreciate you, and we will see you on an upcoming episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. For more free resources to kick debt and financial stress, head over to therealdebtfreedad.com.